We are a couple weeks removed from 2024. It's currently the 16th as the day I'm filming it, and hopefully getting this out by the 17th. But today, I'm finally going to do my best and worst movies of 2024 video. Alright, before we get started, obviously, if you've seen on the channel, I already ranked every movie I've seen in 2024, all 76 movies, new releases that I've seen that released last year. So you can go check out that live stream. It was a really fun one to hear my thoughts on everyone. We're not going to spend too much time on this because obviously I have several videos where I've talked about each one of these in the past. I have reviews for, I think, every single one of these movies. And then I also, again, with that big ranking, talked about them there. So we're not going to spend too much time here. Before I get started, what is your best and worst movies of 2024? How this video is going to work? I got categories. I got best comic book movie, best horror movie, best animated movie, best action movie, and best streaming movie. And then the worst on those same categories as well. Let me know down below what is your opinions on all that. And with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in to the best comic book movie and worst comic book movie. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I already have a comic book movie of 2024 ranked video already out there, and then obviously the big ranking. But the best comic book movie, this was a horrible year for comic book films. It's easily Deadpool and Wolverine. I think if anybody didn't like this movie, they would also say that it is the best comic book movie that released in 2024. I love this movie. I saw it 3 times in the theater, watched it a 4th time at home, and I found it to be hilarious from start to finish. Awesome cameos that, not worship, that's not the right word, but respect the days of old, the old Fox MCU days, while also kind of doing the Deadpool parody thing, but it also kind of respects that. We see characters we never thought we'd see again. We see a character that we never thought we'd see on screen. All the cameos are awesome. Wolverine brings some elite sincerity to this role, and I think he is fantastic in here. There are some great action sequences. Shawn Levy knows how to direct action very well. The story, not a strong point. Story's a little bit weak, but who cares about the story if you have all the heartfelt moments that Deadpool movies have, but you also have the big cameos. You got Wolverine in here, and you got the awesome action sequences directed by Shawn Levy. I adore this film. The worst comic book movie of the year is The Crow, which is a bad movie in and of itself, just turned into a disrespectful movie. I'm not a fan of The Crow, okay? I've still never seen the original Crow. I really want to still, but I watched this one first and it kind of turned me away from that. Brandon Lee got shot and killed on set making that original Crow movie. So his character, Eric Draven, should never be put to screen again. And what do? They name this version of The Crow Eric Draven, put him in a generic action movie with a horrible script. So this turns out disrespectful. And when I say horrible script, it's horrible. Like, the whole first act is like, oh yeah, we gotta have a romance here, so let's just have our 2 characters be like, I love you, baby. If I killed myself, I'd kill or if you killed yourself, I'd kill myself too. That is all we get to figure out the romance in this film. And then there's just plot contrivances, and then when you get to the middle of the film where he's actually the Crow, it just turns into a generic and boring action film. I will give the film that. The Opera House sequence is awesome. Like, that is the only good part about the movie, and that's to the very end of the film. But would I say it's worth watching because of that? No, I hated this movie. Let's dive right into best horror, and a couple of these I'm going to have 2. So for best and worst, I'm going to have 2 of each. Best horror, we got Terrifier 3 and Smile 2. Now, Terrifier 3 is the one that I like not significantly, but just a little pinch less. Not saying a lot because I absolutely adored this film. But we're going to talk about Terrifier 3 first. I loved Terrifier 3. It's my introduction into the Terrifier franchise. I found the film to be horrifying, Art the Clown to be awesome, found the style and the way the film was shot to feel like an old classic horror movie, or an old classic Christmas movie with a horror and creepy skin with Art the Clown in there. The kills are brutal. I really like the lore here. Like, we're in part 2 that I thought that there was some confusing things with the lore. I feel like part 3 kind of evened all that out. And so this was just a film that I had an absolute blast with, had very creepy moments, and is everything I wanted heading into the Terrifier movie. Smile 2 is my probably favorite horror movie of the year. I go back and forth between these 2. But Smile 2 for me is awesome. I didn't have any expectations going into this one just because I haven't seen the first movie. It kind of looked like a generic horror film for me. And I absolutely love this film. Sky Riley, Naomi Scott's performance, freaking amazing. There is, I love movies where you have unreliable narrators, and this is one of those movies. Like, it's super unreliable. You never know which is which, and I get that people can feel like they're being cheated when that happens, but for me, I just kind of felt like, okay, yeah, it keeps me at the edge of my seat, keeps me invested the entire movie, and it really works. There's some great creepy moments in here throughout the entire film. Parker Finn is really good at directing tension, and then that whole, like, final 20, 30 minutes is very creepy with some very creepy imagery, and just images that are engraved in my head. And then, like, I'm very excited for Smile 3, the way this movie left off. I absolutely adored Smile 2, and is my favorite horror movie of 2024. Worst horror, we got Maxine and Imaginary. Maxine is the one I liked just a pinch. Just a tiny little pinch more. Which is not saying a lot, because I despised Maxine. I hated the movie. I felt like it was just a big nothing burger. There was nothing that came out of this movie. It's like, you set up the plot, and then, like, the first hour of the movie, you're just kind of following Maxine and her day-to-day life, just a kind of boring aspect there. And then all of a sudden, like, you kind of get the plot with Kevin Bacon, and it takes away from, like, an actual, that could have been an interesting plot with the Night Stalker. But these Night Stalkers put on the back burner, and you're dealing with stuff with Kevin Bacon. I will give the movie this. Kevin Bacon is really good in the movie, but, like, this whole plot is just not as interesting as what could be as Night Stalker. And so I'm just like, okay, nothing's really happening. And then when you get to the third act where stuff is actually happening, and you find out who the Night Stalker is, the whole twist is so obvious, yet impossible to figure out, because it makes no sense. Because you never, if for a murder mystery, you never met the suspect. You have no idea who this is. And yet it's so obvious that that's the direction that they would go with. And it's just so goofy and so unbelievably stupid in that third act that I just couldn't help but hate this movie. I did not like it whatsoever. Imaginary, this is like a Blumhouse movie. We see thousands of these every year. Not thousands, but you get my point. Where, oh, look, something over there? No? So? Oh, there's something there. Those kind of jump scares throughout the entire movie. It's just basic, boring horror stuff. Never thought any of the performances were good, like, just throughout the entire movie. And then when you get to the third act, where you head into this imaginary world, and it has potential to become a very interesting and compelling horror film, what do you do with that? Nothing. Because the director here, and I can't even remember his name. I really can't, because I just don't care. But I know he directed Fantasy Island, Truth or Dare, and this movie. And I honestly kind of like Truth or Dare. That's a guilty pleasure of mine. That's not saying a lot, because he just doesn't have any sauce. So everything interesting that could be is just boring and predictable, and we've seen it all before, and I did not like Imaginary whatsoever. That, what I would say, is my worst horror movie of the year. We got two favorite animated movies, because these movies are fantastic, but we only got one worst. Best animated, Wild Robot and Inside Out 2. Now, because of my ranking, Wild Robot was number one. I adored this movie, so let's talk about Inside Out 2 first. Really loved Inside Out 2. When the first one came out, I was never a big fan of that, but when I rewatched it, I found that it had so much emotion in it that I couldn't help but fall in love with it. This movie, I think, is a little bit better, because it tells a story that everybody needs to see about anxiety and those complex emotions inside of your body. It's got the Pixar skin over it, where you have this fun adventure, keeps little kids entertained, but when you get to teenage years, or specifically my age, which is bizarre, because obviously I have emotions all figured out, because everybody my age does. Just kidding. Anyways, like, it's powerful stuff in here that everybody needs to see, that explains complex emotions with just the skin over it, that makes it to be a perfect film. And then you get that anxiety attack in the end, and it's just perfectness. The whole film is entirely perfect, and I just adored the movie for what it was. And these Inside Out movies are, I can describe in one word, special. But The Wild Robot has to be my favorite movie of the year, and this being out Dune Part 2, which I think is absolutely crazy. The Wild Robot is absolutely fantastic. I adored The Wild Robot. From the beginning to end, it's just got this magic to it, this emotion to it, where it's explaining motherhood, it's explaining parenthood specifically. You have reactions to what the children do. You have all those emotions here in this big fantasy world where you got talking animals and a giant robot, but it has complex themes throughout the entire movie. I'm not a parent. I'm 19 years old, guys. I don't have a kid. But for me, from beginning to end, I just found it to be emotional and perfect. And I was late to the party, but I sat in this theater and I was sobbing my eyes out by the end of it. It is just a perfect film. I adore this film. Worst animated movie of the year, Kung Fu Panda 4. Now, I get that this Kung Fu Panda franchise, kind of for kids, but when you get those first 3 movies, and they're a really good trilogy, I never loved them like everybody else does, but it's still a really good trilogy. Then you get this film, and it's an obvious cash grab, where you got the predictable stuff, it's recycling plot lines, you just got Kung Fu Panda doing his thing throughout the entire movie. Throughout the entire movie, it's like predictable, but it's fine. But that third act is where I have a lot of problems, where you bring in Tai Lung, who was a really cool villain from that first movie. You bring him into this one. And what do? You just have him say, Kung Fu Panda, you suck. Haha, you suck, Kung Fu Panda. And then the villain gets defeated, and he walks up to Kung Fu Panda. Hey, Kung Fu Panda, you're not that bad. But you know what? Kung Fu Panda did not defeat the villain. The Awkwafina's character did. But no, because the writing is out the window with this one. Obvious cash grab, and I hate it when films... I think Kung Fu Panda 3 ended perfectly on that third film. My personal favorite out of them all is that third film. Kung Fu Panda 4 is just a cash grab, and it just leaves a huge sour taste in your mouth. Now, I do realize that this format for this video is a little bit interesting. So for Best Action, I'm going to go with a couple of honorable mentions, because action for me is really definitely a wide margin of films, where like any film with action, you can have sci-fi action, you can have action spy movie, you can have comedy action. It's a big wide margin. So here in the action categories, where I'm going to name off several movies I did really adore. I don't feel like there's a specific best action movie, because again, it is just this wide margin. But then there is 2 action movies that I did not like whatsoever. Let's start off with Dune Part 2, my second favorite movie of the year, and I don't really consider this an action movie, I consider it sci-fi, but I figured I can put it in this action category. Denis Villeneuve is a fantastic director. He's absolutely wonderful. He crafts the world in the first film, and in this one you get off all the payoff and all the execution that you wanted from that first film. You get awesome action sequences, awesome character growth out of our characters. Timothée Chalamet's Paul Atreides is absolutely fantastic, and it leaves off at a part that makes you like, oh my god, I cannot wait for part 3. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I adore that most recent Planet of the Apes trilogy with Caesar, and this one, I just thought started off a new set of films perfectly. I found that it got us invested in this new set of characters. Every character has this intriguing conflict inside of them, where they want to do one thing, but they also want to do another thing. Pulls at them. Proximus Caesar is a great villain. Sound design is fantastic. Cinematography is great. And Wes Ball directs this film fantastically. So Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is a movie that I also adored. The Fall Guy, this is a comedy action film by David Leitch, and it is my favorite David Leitch film, I think. I just have so much fun with this movie. Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt are hilarious on screen together, and they have fantastic chemistry. The action set pieces, David Leitch can direct them very good, and so they were really good in here. The third act, not as great when the actual story kind of kicks in, but it's still really fun with great action sequences. I really have a lot of fun with The Fall Guy. Gladiator 2, this was kind of like I wouldn't say a historical action film, but like period piece action film. I watched the first Gladiator for the first time before seeing this one, and I loved that movie, and I watched this one, and I love this movie too. I think they're both really even. This film specifically has intriguing conflicts between the characters as well, where like you have layers to it with Pedro Pascal's character, Paul Mescal's character. Each have layering conflicts where you're rooting for both of them in here. Denzel Washington is phenomenal in the film. The action set pieces are absolutely wonderful. Like, there's some of the best action set pieces that are in film, in modern film. They look fantastic. Ridley Scott directs it perfectly. Rebel Ridge, the final one here. This is a Netflix movie, but it doesn't feel like a Netflix movie. Much slower than I thought it would be, but it's able to build up the tension very well until you get to that third act where all the stuff, all the payoff that you wanted happens. We don't get movies like this anymore, and it was great. Now, a couple of the worst action movies of 2024. Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Now, this was a movie that very hard to mess up. You got people killing Nazis, Henry Cavill, Alan Rickman. Hard to mess up, Guy Ritchie. And for Guy Ritchie, a director that I can find to be very fun, I did not like this film whatsoever. From the very beginning, it just kind of feels like you didn't want to have Henry Cavill and Alan Rickman on screen together. And so it just feels like you don't get the stuff that you want until like the third act of the film. And when it's the third act when they're killing Nazis, yeah, it's fun and all, but then the film ends and kind of makes you feel like, actually, that feels like the first 30 minutes in a big epic saga film about stopping the Nazis. Because like finally you get we're the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and then the movie ends. So like the plot is all over the place. You don't get the stuff that you actually want in this film until like the final 30 minutes of it. So I just really didn't like this film. Kill. Now, I am apparently not a big fan of Indian action movies. I saw Monkey Man earlier this year, and I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was great. This movie, I thought that it had some great action sequences in here, but, like, the film is very long. Like, it has this intriguing concept of, like, the villains, they are bad guys. But, like, you're also seeing their family get torn apart and get murdered, and you're watching them kind of spiral. But, like, yeah, it's really cool the first couple times, but then you move on, you get more of that, and it keeps going on and on and on, and then again, it gets repetitive over and over again, where you're just watching the guy, oh, kill, yeah, well, let's kill everybody, and then it keeps going on way too long, and stuff that if this was maybe 90 minutes, I'd say, yeah, that's good, but it kept going on too long. I just got really sick and tired of it by the time the movie was over. So Kill, I just didn't really vibe with, and it hurts because that's the movie I was really looking forward to. Last category in today's video, best streaming movie. Before I tell you guys this, again, please make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell, and comment down below. What is your best and worst movies of the year? If you got more categories, you can add them, or you can stick to the categories I put in this video. And stay tuned for the final ranking of 2024 coming very soon, which will be every TV show, every TV season that I saw in 2024 ranked, coming very soon to you guys. So make sure you stay tuned for that as well. And this weekend, I am going to have a couple rankings of like every Suicide Squad project and my Leigh Whannell ranking. So stay tuned for those videos as well. The best streaming movie of the year is Carry On. This was a Christmas thriller in the vein of Die Hard that I thought was really good. It was very intense throughout. Very interesting premise here that sets up some very tense situations that I think really work. Jason Bateman, I think, is a phenomenal villain in this film. He's able to be very creepy while also kind of just having this charisma to him. Did think, again, the third act kind of goes a little bit off the rails in the third act, but this is just a movie I really enjoyed. I'm a huge thriller fan, and this one was one of the most effective ones in the 2020s. The worst streaming movie of the year, Time Cut. This is... You guys remember Totally Killer from last year? Well, this is Netflix's version of Totally Killer that was apparently made before Totally Killer, which is really weird that it's releasing here because this is exactly the same movie but doesn't have any of the fun to it. Like, it has a horrible script, where Totally Killer was smart. This one is not smart. You don't care about any of the characters. It's not fun whatsoever. None of the kills are intense whatsoever. And it's just boring. Where I watched Totally Killer after watching this film, because Totally Killer is very fun and entertaining. This film didn't have anything that Totally Killer does. It's a knockoff of... Well, this one made first, but it's exactly the same film as Totally Killer, but without anything that made Totally Killer good. Thank you guys for clicking on the best and worst movies of 2024. Stay tuned for all those videos I mentioned coming very soon. Subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell, and comment down below. What is your best and worst movies of 2024? Why was that hard to get out? Thank you guys for clicking on this one. With that said, subscribe to the Leonard Army. Peace out.